Sugya of Maaser Shabbos. I really need the Olam to. I think the Olam are pretty much by Siv Gimel already, if not deep in the middle of Siv Gimel. So I'm hoping the next couple of days we'll start with Siv Gimel. Siv Gimel, by the way, is tremendous. There are so many yesodis that we have discussed in Siv Gimel. Just in case you're stuck in Siv Beis, go quickly through Siv Beis. It's not so much negaya to our sugya, especially not Bishul, but Siv Gimel really starts up the sugya. There's a lot of sugyas like Duchemesh and everything else that we're going to have to discuss Barichas and Siv Gimel. Then, of course, Siv Daled, then we get really into the meat and potatoes of Hilchas Bishul. So I just want to finish off one of the sugyas of Maaser Shabbos. And like I said, there's so much more that we really can discuss and should discuss. But just for the sake of getting moving, I want to finish off. We left off with a couple of ideas, and that is as follows. We're holding now by different types of hana that a person can and cannot get on Shabbos Kodesh, and we're going to end with a sugya Be'ez Hashem of electricity in Eretz Yisrael. Again, not going to do the topic justice to what we should be doing it, but just to give a Rashi Prokem on the surface value of what we can, maybe Marmakomis, so the item could look it up, at their own time. So what happens if you have, and this is very negaya, unfortunately in Eretz Yisrael, where you have a bus that leaves on Shabbos Kodesh. You know that because it got to your bus stop mamish minutes after Motzei Shabbos. I'm not talking about Rabbeinu Tam. So if it got there minutes after Motzei Shabbos, it means that he drove it already on Shabbos Kodesh to pick you up. Major machloikas hapoiskim. Whether you are, we're talking of course a Machal Shabbos driver, Rahman Letzlon, talking about a Yid that's Machal Shabbos to drive that bus to get to you on Shabbos Kodesh. There is a tshuva in the Oznid Baru, in Chelik Aleph Siman Yud Zayin, that he wants to be Mekel, because he says that the malacha that he did is no longer here anymore. It's not Kayim. It's not existence anymore. The malacha that he did anymore, which is interesting. He also calls it a gram hana, which is also interesting. The Mishnah Halachas Rabbi Nasher Klein, also in Chelik Zayin, Kinyan Torah Chelik Beis, Tzitz Eliezer Yud Gimel, also wants to be Mekel, to say that if you get a bus, Mamish Motzei Shabbos, minutes after Shabbos goes out, no shaila, he drove it on Shabbos, they want to be Mekel. The Tzitz Eliezer does leave off, and he says, you should make a Machar, an Ashrei HaMachme, but Akaponim, he's definitely Mekel. However, Rav Elyashiv Zatzal, Reb Shlomo Zalman, Dayan Fisher, the Minchas Yitzchak, Reb Nissen Karelitz, and others held no, absolutely not. You're not allowed to have any hana from that b'chalal, and if it's tainis may have a din of a goy, kadei shiyasu, and therefore that will be a problem over there. What about, for example, calling a taxi? Again?
The routes go and they come back, and they go and they come back. Which point you say that's mutter, that I'm not added for the fact that you started half an hour earlier?
You're saying at what stage does it become okay? You're saying if I'm the second stop, not the first stop? That's what you mean?
Second stop around the second round. You wouldn't have done the first round, you would have got at which point?
No, the second round you don't have to say that, because if you wouldn't have done the first round, then maybe it would have come to me first, and I would have come to me earlier. I'm not mamish nana from the first round. No, it's talking about where in order for him to have got to you where you are now, he had to have done a Chil Shabbos. If it's not that way, then he didn't have to do a Chil Shabbos. Rather, he did, but he didn't have to have done. That's the chiluk. It all depends if he had to have done, and that's the next question. You're going to the airport. It could be worse because they shasu. Yeah,
so
correct.
Most of them have drivers, whatever, it'd be worse.
Some yes, some no, yeah. Could be worse, you have to wait Kadei Shasu. We're going to get Nochmal. When he comes to the bus stop, you won't be able to use it. Doesn't make a difference if Kadei Shasu or not, you won't be able to use it anyway. That's the thing. You're going to the airport, Motzei Shabbos. We had this once with Yeshiva. Again?
It's hard to say they didn't do it for me.
No, he's doing it for you. He's doing it for the people who are there, otherwise he wouldn't be doing it.
You're doing it anyway.
No. He's doing the malacha, not the mitzvah.
Anyway.
Doesn't make a difference. He's doing it for. Yeah, but he's doing it for if there'd be no week at the bus stops, then he wouldn't be doing it. It wouldn't have a run. It wouldn't have a the thing there. It's not good enough to say that he's doing it for his job. He's doing a thing. He's not doing it for me. So you're doing a malacha for a yid because he yid in the Maaser Eretz Yisrael. We're talking about Eretz Yisrael. So maybe Chutzlaris would be different. Al Kaponim, what if you're leaving Motzei Shabbos to the airport? You need a taxi right after Shabbos. I remember we had this with Yeshiva. I don't remember which trip it was. Maybe it was Dubai. Maybe it was another one. We needed to leave. Which one was it? Was on? Azerbaijan maybe. We needed to leave mamish like minutes after Motzei Shabbos. Akdei kach that I think some of the Rebbeim left their suitcases in the building of yeshiva or on the bus. So what do? We asked the bus driver to come before Shabbos. He parked mamish outside yeshiva or near yeshiva, whatever it was, and he walked or something like that. I don't know, he lived in the area, whatever it may be. But what happens if you order a taxi Motzei Shabbos, for Motzei Shabbos, you're leaving to the airport right after Shabbos, like what's the din? He has to drive in order to get to you in that case. So it's interesting, both Rav Falk Zatzal, but also Rabbi Zuyal Orbach Shlita told me that there's no problem with that whatsoever. Why? Because he could have done it beheta. He and the Maaser could have left his taxi outside your house and he could have walked home, he could have figured out a mahalach. He didn't do that because it was more convenient for him to drive. That's not my issue. I'm allowed to do that because I don't have to worry. Unless you know the Metzias is that he has no other way. But generally speaking, if you're ordering a taxi, they don't live sometimes so far. Some of them do live in our areas. So if that's the case, there's definitely a mokum that he wanted the tiny to be mekel because again, he could have done it beheta. He decided to do it be'issa. That's not already my issue. I don't have to worry. Doesn't make a difference. It's a sugya, by the way, that we're not talking about now, Masal Devaveir Lifnei Iver, of inviting people for Shabbos when I know they're going to drive. Right? I know that these people, I want to invite them, I want them to have an experience of Shabbos Kodesh, so I want to invite them to my house. But I know they're going to drive. Without going into all the sugyas now, because we're not learning Lifnei Iver and Masal Devaveir, but generally speaking, if you offer them a place to stay, say, listen, I have 2 beds, I have a room for you to stay in my house. Please come and stay back. You know they're not going to take it. You know they're going to drive home. Doesn't make a difference. I've offered them a way to do it beheta. They decided to do it be'issa. That's not my issue already. Right? Again, it's not really Maaser Shabbos. That's more Masad Vaver and Lifnei Iver than Maaser Shabbos. Let's move on very quickly because there's a lot of different shaylas that we have to get to, and that is as follows. What happens, for example, about for example, you open up a fridge and the light went on in that case? Can you have hana from anything in the fridge? Because after all, you're opening up the fridge, the light goes on, you're able to see what goes in that case. So the most of the poskim are l'maisa mekel. They hold that the food will never become osir in that case, especially if it was done b'shogeg, you didn't know the light was on, whatever it may be. There's definitely a mokum to be mekel. What about listening to the weather reports or news on Motzei Shabbos? Again, we're talking about Eretz Yisrael, where unfortunately Nebuch, it's done by a Friar Yid, by someone who is Jewish, who's not keeping Shabbos in that case. So Dayan Fisher used to say that you have to wait Kedei Shiyasu. Don't listen to the news until it takes the amount of time to record it. Not necessarily to drive there and get there and put it online, but to record whatever they did. That's where the problem is. In that case, Mr. Gares was fire against it. You can't even, he even held that the flight scheduling and the exchange rates that they have of currencies, all of these things that are updated on Shabbos are going to be problematic in that case, and therefore you have to be machmeh. Again, if you know it was done by a goy that's machal al Shabbos, and you're listening miyad after Shabbos, normally speaking, I'm assuming.
If it's a 30-second video.
So that's Kedei Shiyasu. Right, that's what I'm saying. Unless you're a bocha in yeshiva, and for some reason, I don't know why, the minute the Shabbos goes out, you mamish have to get that phone, and you have to look at what's going on. I think most of us, Baruch Hashem, we can wait till Mariv, Havdalah, Rabbeinu Tam, like, okay, after that, it's already considered to be Kedei Shiyasu, we don't have to worry. I wasn't referring to you, you might be there,
They could have made that video not on Shabbos. That scene that the video happened on Shabbos.
Okay, therefore.
There's no Kedei Shiyasu.
Why not?
Because they can never get that video not on Shabbos.
Like that I have to wait the amount of time it took them to do that thing be'issa.
Always we know for this, if they would have waited till Shabbos, they wouldn't have gotten that video.
I just want to say it's asal ha'olam.
If it's a type of scene, that's a scene that happened.
It did. It always is. News is what happened on Shabbos.
That's what they take a picture of a crash, and that crash happened on Shabbos. You always mean anything that much Shabbos. There's never going to be a Kedei Shiyasu.
And a chanami. So first of all, re'iyah is a machlekes whether re'iyah is subject to hana or not, to shaila me'ila. Right, but generally the poskim are mekel to say that. First of all, most of these people are tinik shenishba anyway. Most of the people doing it are considered to be a tinik shenishba. They're not mamish, right? It could be there's no Kedei Shiyasu anyway. But even if there is Kedei Shiyasu, we're talking about the issa. We want to remove the issa. Now you're right, the crash happened on Shabbos, but I want to remove the amount of time it took for them to do that thing, which was also, which was 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes, whatever it was. I wait. I'm not nana from exactly what they did. True, I'm being nana from the re'iyah that they put on because it happened on Shabbos. They couldn't have done it on Motzei Shabbos, but I'm not nana from the malacha that they did. And the malacha need the Kedei Shiyasu. What happens if a person gets an email?
Setting up the camera system to open Kedei Shiyasu.
Which system?
Setting up the camera.
Oh, setting up? No.
Everything is.
Otherwise, traveling there and everything's included, so no. what happens if you get an email on, you open up the email on Motzei Shabbos, and let's say it's from someone in America, so it's still Shabbos by them, and it's a non from Yid. And you know who it is, right? Over the years, I have definitely received messages from boys, when after Motzei Shabbos, and never, it's the middle of Shabbos for them. It's the middle of Shabbos for them. So obviously I don't open it and I don't answer back, because that would be an over lifnei either. One time I did, because the guy was in a mental hospital, and it was a situation that he needed something, so I did actually answer it, and I was saying on the drabonons and different things, and it was like a shtickle pekuach nefesh situation. But generally speaking, second day Yom Tov also, for some reason, I don't know, Bochum have this, I don't need to keep 2 days, I can keep 1 day. So they decided, whatever. I had a good shaila, by the way. Not obviously, not this yeshiva, but I get the shaila sometimes. What happens when you got a bacha that decides to keep 1 day Yom Tov? This guy's doing 1 day Yom Tov. So one of the Rebbeim said to me, so Efsha here in Eretz Yisrael, he decides to keep 1 day Yom Tov, and second, let's say Shavuos, so let's say Simchas Torah. So should we at least get him to put on tefillin? I'm saying he's not keeping Yom Tov, so at least we should get him to put on tefillin. At least something, no? It's absolutely not. No tefillin. It is Yom Tov for him. The chat is because Michal Yom Tov means that he keeps a din of 1 day and Mameli as he's a chiv tefillin? Absolutely not. He's got a din of 2 days. He decided to keep 1 day. Doesn't give him a din of 1 day, and Mameli's got no chiv tefillin that day. Anyway, that's what I told him. But I can put him, huh? Say that. Al Kaponim, you get an email, you get a message from a Yid on Shabbos, right? What's that?
Without a Chatzon there's no Shaila.
So the Maaser, you can open it up after Kadesh Yasu, and the same would be as well. By the way, Rav Falk also told me about all these people that take the news. They're all considered to be a Tinnik Shenishba, which means the Maaser, it's a Shoygeg. So after Kadesh Yasu, for sure you're okay without any problem whatsoever, because most of them are considered to be a Tinnik Shenishba. A Tinnik Shenishba, we explained this once before. I think we did, right? We explained the Tinnik Shenishba a little bit? Yeah. No? Did we not? When? Last month by Refuah. Chazanish, very good. Chazanish, I must have said it. The Chazanish said, unless you sat down with this Yid and you've given him the proper explanation of what means Shabbos Kodesh and everything else, so don't blame him that all he sees on the news is some fanatical Jews doing some protests. So he thinks you guys are a bunch of Michiganers. He doesn't understand.
I say the same thing about 80% of yeshiva.
That what?
Nobody explained to them Shabbos.
That's true. And therefore, I hear. Downstairs, by the way, we do try to explain a lot about Shabbos. Baruch Hashem. 90% of chinuch is in the home. Okay, yes. But nowadays, with technology, there's a lot that they see outside. The Stipler used to say, you want to check into a shidduch, you check out, now it's the influencing that's going on outside. Okay, whatever, not anyone here. No, it's not true. And that's all you can. Their whole chinuch for some of these people was, and you can hear from some of the hostages that came out, they didn't chap. They didn't chap what these didn't all about. Huh? Right. They have no idea. They posh it on a Shema Yisrael. They have no idea. They had no chinuch. No one sat with them and explained. They just saw videos of guys, sitting in front of buses, and they think all of you are crazy. Forget it's worse. Right, exactly. Rabbi, so let's continue. I want to get to electricity. We have to move on. I wish there's so much more we have to get to. Let's get to. Correct. Okay, let's go straight to electricity. A taxi Erev Shabbos to Kollel, and he's going to drive back. Again, it's not really my issue, because he could park and walk. He could. I know that he's not going to, but that's not really my issue. Not my problem. Maybe he's going to his cousin for Shabbos. Again, maybe it's better not to. Else Issa, it's not. Let's talk about electricity. So I must tell you about electricity on Shabbos in Eretz Yisrael. It is very complicated. It's complicated for a few reasons. Number one, when I did my research, and I'll admit I did not do my research that recently. This was my last cycle of giving Shiur Maaser Shabbos, so it's very likely things have changed. Number two, even when I did my research, so it was very hard to know what the real Metzias is. They hide a lot of things. They put a lot of things. When you do research on many things, it's very hard to get a lot of Metzias. We'll talk about it when we get to, for example, in Siv Hey, when we talk about Bishul Achatzli, Tzlech HaBishul, or Bishul Achatzli HaBishul, when we talk about coffee. It's very, very hard to get the companies of Nescafe and whatever to give you the exact recipe and their mahalach of how they do it, because they don't want to tell you. Like, who are you? You're calling up to find out how we make our roasted beans. We're not interested. So it's very hard sometimes to get the Metzias. That's my disclaimer to this sugya of electricity on Shabbos. Another one is, when it comes to electricity on Shabbos, ask a local Orthodox rabbi what you should do lemaisa when it comes to this. I have a Kabbalah for my Rosh Hashiva, which obviously I'm going to tell you, but again, if you have your own Kabbalah, your own minhagim, beautiful. I'm just giving you some of the Metzias and some of the poskim. So I spoke at length with Rav Morgenstern Shlita. Rav Morgenstern was the basically Talmud Muvuk of Rav Elyashiv. I spent time with him. I actually went to, when Rav Elyashiv was alive, I went to daven with him in the morning, and that's also a time you can chap Rav Elyashiv. One of the best times, by the way, that used to be able to chap Rav Elyashiv was between wrapping up Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin by Shachris. Because that when anyone could walk in, anyone could ask him shaylas. But Rav Morgenstern, the Maaser, was someone who had a kfiyas there, and if you had any question, you want to ask it in a much clearer way, you asked him and he asked him. It was a great way of doing it, and that's what we did. So I asked Rav Morgenstern was a big baki in many things, but one of them is in this sugya as well, and he spent many years on this sugya specifically. And the way that they do electricity, without going into too much detail, is they obviously split it up. There's a lot of gas, but there's also steam, right? There's a low percentage, but there is a percentage that they do, and they produce electricity in Eretz Yisrael through steam, which is almost like a magnet with a coil going backwards and forwards the whole time, and that produces electricity. Right? And that's what it is. In order to have electricity, they need to produce electricity in that case, and they have a huge dud with pipes and all sorts of fire and presses and compresses and whatever it is that's producing chashmal. Fine. There is one place in Germany that does it automatically. Most places cannot produce electricity automatically. They need manual workers. They need workers, benzias. They need physical workers making the electricity. So they pour the pcham, there's all these coals and everything, into these tractors, and they drive them into the right places. Kitzur, it's a whole avodah. It will not work without having physical workers, and it needs to be done 24 hours a day, 7 days a week in Eretz Yisrael. Again, could be that this varies depending on the time of year and the Metzias, but generally speaking in Eretz Yisrael, at least the last time I found out, there were 12,000 workers in Chashmal Yisrael, in the electricity company in Israel, that are Yiddish workers. They taina by law, they can't have goyim, even though, just get goyim. No, we can't for security purposes. Maybe because if all the goyim would go along and make a sabotage, they can sabotage all the electricity in Eretz Yisrael. Who knows what could happen? That's what they taina. I don't know what that means. Some of the poskim said slicha, so just get Yiddish workers, Yiddish people watching them as a shomer to make sure they don't do that. Whatever it is. The Metzias is, they have Yidden, and there's nothing they could do about it in that case. Now, up to 10% of human electricity being produced is okay, but generally they do a lot more than that. Now, you can't produce too much electricity in advance. You can't store it, right? Which is why, by the way, coming up soon, Be'ez Hashem, we have Hanukkah. You can't use electricity for Neiros Hanukkah. Why? Because Ner Hanukkah requires a share not in size, a share in time. You can't store electricity. A battery is a good shayla, yoitza, maybe not yoitza, I don't know. But the point is that electricity cannot be stored, and therefore whatever they have is what is used. Now, lefi zeh, since that, let's just try to go, if you don't mind, I'm going to try to go through it, because otherwise, the Chazon Ish has a famous tshuva in Orach Chaim Lamed Ches Dalet, where he writes, there's no shaila, it is absolutely chilul Hashem to use the electricity in Eretz Yisrael on Shabbos Kodesh. Ad kedei kach, that the Chazon Ish uses a mashal. This is the mashal that the Chazon Ish uses. And the mashal is like this. Imagine if Rahman al-Itzlan Aleinu, you ever saw a Sefer Torah Rahman al-Itzlan on fire. You see a Sefer Torah on fire, and you need a light for your cigarette. So you go over to the Sefer Torah that's nebach on fire, and you light your cigarette. Zug the Chazon Ish, That's the same as using electricity in Eretz Yisrael on Shabbos Kodesh. A poshut chilul Hashem. Just to put things into perspective, right? Shabbos is coming. We have a few days, but that's what the Chazon Ish says. The Stipler, by the way, held the same way. Rav Shach held that way. Rav Yashu, Rav Nisim Kareretz, and others. It's an absolute chilul Hashem to use electricity in Eretz Yisrael. Okay, so you'll tell me, but the Olam does. Okay, generators, we know, if you have a generator, kavaldik, maybe you need one, maybe you don't, but if you don't have a generator, so what do? What are you soymech on? So the most important and probably biggest heta that the Olam knows is that there are cholim, not only in the hospitals, but you have elderly people, you have kids that are not well, you have people that are not well that need, breathing machines, you have all sorts of things in all sorts of buildings, you don't know where they are, who they are, you can't get them, you can't find out before. Mimela, they're doing it for the heta of the cholim. Once it's mutter for them, so Mimela, say no, you can get Hana also because they were doing it baheta. Once they're doing it baheta, so I can take the electricity. The problem is, yes, it's a gavaldige heta. The Maaser, it's not 100%, MS nowadays, because nowadays you could get Goyish workers, you could have Yidden who are watching them. Also, most of the reason why they have physical workers is to save money. They could do it without that apparently. They have no kavanah for the choila, they're not doing it for the choila. We have that heta. That's not why they're doing it. Again, if you ask them, that's what they'll tell you, right? But the Maaser, the Metzias is not that way. But there is definitely what to be soymech on with that heta. No shaila over there. Moshe, for example, has a tshuva in Gus Moshe Chaim Chelidala Kuf Chav Zayin, where Moshe brings down that since they could do it beheta through a goy, so now there's no heta anymore. So then it's also in that case, and he writes himself that you can go get Yiddish shoymim to watch to make sure they don't sabotage their electricity in Eretz Yisrael. Another heta is zev goyim. They don't only use the electricity, so the electricity that we have is not only coming to us because of what's done by physical labor, right? Something called zev goyim. Those of you that are familiar with Yeridea, in the Ramah, the beginning of Simon Pei Zayin, at the end of Simon Pei Zayin, the Ramah talks about zev goyim. It's a klal that we have in Shas. When you have two things that are goyim, so generally we could be makel in that case. However, the poskim say over here, maybe it wouldn't work because the zev goyim doesn't really equal out in balance. Pseda. There's another heta that the poskim want to use, is that it became mutter, meaning once they started doing it be'issa, they started it already. Now they can't stop, because if they stop, they're going to shut down all electricity in Eretz Yisrael. Mimela, they have to continue. Once they have to continue, and I'm using electricity, there's a mokim to say in that case. Now there's major problems with that heta, not going into now. We can go through each one of these heterim and speak about why they're not heterim and how we can slug it up. There's one heta that you can't really slug up, although people did try. And that's a heta from my Rosh Hashiva of Shaimek. Chaim Pinchas Shaimek Zatzal gave a very big and intricate, detailed share about this Nakuda. And that's the reason why he told us that we don't need a generator. The days that Rav Shaimek himself was alive, there was no generator in Torah or Yeshiva. Afterwards now, they put one up, maybe L'chum or whatever, but generally speaking not. And he wanted to taina a tremendous chiddush. He was machadish the following. He wanted to taina that a groma by Maaser Shabbos is mutter. Why? The Torah says, Lo Sasa Kol Malacha.